Breaking Barriers with Bruce Marks. Today we're going to be talking about these corporate landlords. These landlords who are buying up residential properties around the country, remember, single-family homes, and renting them out at exorbitant rents. So when you talk to people around the country, whether it's in an urban community, rural community, and across racial lines and even economic lines, one of the biggest issues out there, if not the biggest issue, is unaffordable rents and the inability to be a homeowner. So let's talk about that. Because if you listen to the elected officials, what do they say? We got to build more housing. What are they not saying? That we're losing more and more houses every day, many more than we can ever produce, to these corporate investors, hedge funds and others who have massive amounts of money, and they're using that to buy up residential properties. And then they're saying to the people who they outbid, who wanted to purchase that home, oh, don't worry, we can rent it out to you. So what does that mean? That means that the tenants' rents are subsidizing and generating massive amounts of wealth for the already extremely wealthy. So what are we going to do about this? Well, what we know is that the elected officials are not standing with us to take on this fight. Why? Because these players, Blackstone, Invitation Homes, many others, are lining the pockets of the elected officials to silence them. But we know on the grassroots level, this is the most important issue. And this is the issue that animates people. We do these Achieve the Dream events. And I talk to a lot of the tenants. I said, what is the biggest issue? And when you mention these corporate investors, they say yes, and they know their names, they know what they're doing, and they want to take on the fight. So just like during the mortgage crisis, NACA is going to be in the forefront of taking on this fight. So what does it mean? How are we going to do this? Well, on January 8th, we're going to announce this campaign. We're going to provide the information around the country of the top 20 corporate landlords and all the properties that they own. Now, we've identified over 800,000 properties that these corporate investors own, these corporate landlords. Now, these are owned by the top 20. And then we've also looked in the regional areas of who are the top players of these corporate landlords in the regions. So we've identified over 800,000 tenants, and we're doing outreach to every one of those tenants. And then NACA has 3.7 million members, and we're reaching out to them because many of our members are tenants or they're homeowners, and they know other people who are renting from these corporate landlords. So that's the campaign. We're going to be out there, just like during the mortgage crisis, when no one had the nerve, no one had the commitment to go after Countrywide, because back then they were considered the gold standard, and everybody was afraid of Countrywide. But NACA was the first one. We announced the campaign at the National Press Club going after Countrywide, and that we were able to beat Countrywide, and that set the standard for modifying over 500,000 homeowners, saving their homes from foreclosure. Well, NACA is going to do the same thing now. Because when you look back, how did these corporate landlords get into this business? Well, a lot of them came out of the mortgage crisis. So during the mortgage crisis, these ultra-wealthy investors, they bought mortgage-backed securities. Well, these securities went bad, as we predicted. And frankly, as I testified on September 12th of 2000 in front of the House Financial Services Committee in Washington, D.C., saying that this crisis was going to happen. Well, we know that the next crisis is happening now, and that's unaffordable rent, unaffordable housing costs, and the inability for people to purchase homes. These investors during the mortgage crisis, what happened is they ended up owning the properties because they were foreclosed on. And then they figured out we can make money not by owning mortgage-backed securities, but by actually owning the properties themselves. And they kept buying and buying, and they're still buying and buying properties. People should be able to purchase at home and generate wealth for themselves and not be subjected to the control of the landlords. But we also see this firsthand because at NACA, we qualify people with NACA's Best in America mortgage. No down payment, no closing costs, no fees, always at a below market fixed rate without consideration of one's credit score. So we do all that work. And the home buyer is really excited. They're NACA qualified. We're going to go out and we're going to do the housing search. We're going to find the house. And they find that house of their dreams. It's available now, even though there's fewer of them to buy because of these corporate landlords. And then they're outbid by these cash buyers, these corporate landlords. So, it affects people in so many different ways. It affects the government agencies, the cities and towns, because they don't have the stable residents for the school systems and others, not the fault of the renters, but because these corporate landlords make money by churning over people, by churning people through them. They make money the more that they can get from rent. So this is a fight that NACA is well positioned to take on, but also I'd say we have an obligation to take on, because NACA's mission is fighting for economic justice. And this is what we have to do. So when the elected officials have sold out their constituents, when the elected officials and the government doesn't stand up for the people, for low and moderate income, and people in general, that's where NACA steps in. So please go to our website at naca.com, naca.com, and complete the information about the campaign against these predatory corporate landlords. Now, this is going to be a tough fight. Let's not kid ourselves. Blackstone is not just one of the biggest players in America. They're the largest landlord in the world. They're doing this in Madrid. They're doing this in England. They're doing this around the world as the largest corporate landlord. And they got massive amounts of money. And you can look at, Invitation Homes with, over 85,000 properties. And then you look and you say, where are they concentrated? Well, they own over 30,000 properties in the Atlanta area. They own over 20,000 properties in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. They own over 30,000 in Los Angeles area. Around, and you look at, St. Louis, you look at Phoenix, you look at Chicago, you look around the country, it's concentrated in the rural communities as well, and in the suburbs. So this is a tough fight. They have massive amounts of money, they have political influence, but they don't have the people. NACA has the people. So this is a campaign from the grassroots up to take on the biggest, most powerful corporate predatory landlords in the country and in the world. So please, let's take on this fight. Join NACA. I started NACA 40 years ago. We have beat some of the biggest, most powerful financial institutions and players in this country, and we haven't lost. So this is going to be a tough fight. It's going to be a long fight, but we're going to win this. Remember, it gets back to the old basic tenant organizing, right? So we're going to provide the information to everybody, to the communities, and saying, do you realize that your neighbor is dealing with the same corporate landlord that you're dealing with? Do you realize that on your street there's 10, 15, maybe more tenants who are dealing with the same predatory corporate landlord that you're dealing with? Because you might not know, because they have their management companies, that behind them are these very wealthy, very powerful, greedy, predatory landlords. But then you say, where do they get their money from? Well, they might be using our money to exploit us, because they might be using, we know that they are, pension monies, other forms of, of our money that they're using to take advantage and to generate wealth for themselves and stealing it from us. And they're already unbelievably wealthy, but for them, it's never enough. So please join NACA, go to NACA.com. Let's take on this fight. And like any fight that NACA gets into, we do whatever it takes, nonviolent, in an aggressive way to win. And we're going to win this fight. Thank you.